Alright, I think we got this mess sorted out here. Hopefully, at least. Y'all hear me alright? Alright. Get this tripod fixed here. Tell you what, man, technology is a pain in the ass sometimes. Never works when you want it to work. Yeah, I don't know why it never works on my laptop. It just sits there and on like a loading screen for ever, and doesn't move, doesn't do anything. So until I figure that out, we'll just do these on my phone. It's annoying because I don't think I can save the chat on the options it gave me. Just stupid, but how's everyone doing? What y'all been working on this week? Situated here. What's going on, Kentucky Prepper? K-Paul 5x5. So we'll give it another couple of minutes here, see if we can get over 10 or so people. Make sure you hit the like button. Get this thing going a little bit. So, start things off. Just remember, kids, don't always drink the Kool-Aid. I've got 2 pieces of Java Monster in my lap. Heavy breathing has entered the chat. Hell yeah, man! That'll be a fun class. Do a little bit different spin on things that we normally have run. So that's a nice thing about branching out on your own, is you get to really dictate the curriculum that you're teaching. You're not stuck to adhere to a certain curriculum or principles or system or anything like that. You can kind of put something together that's in your mind a little bit more logical, or a little bit more to your taste. It's going, David. So how about them Cowboys? I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I like making fun of them. Yeah, man, that's the nice thing with that class. It's extremely affordable, especially the other class that me and Tony are doing in Indiana. If that's a little bit closer to anyone else out there, the price point's nice, so it's a good entry level of kind of dipping your toes in the water before jumping full in on a survival class, because they run the gambit of experiences. You know, some are like beat you down into the dirt. Some of them are just, meeting in a park and learn some skills. So it's nice to kind of get a variety, because not only you understand skills from a different aspect, but you understand, get a chance to hear it from a different perspective, teaching style, things like that. Hail to the Redskins. Hey, they might be coming back. So I know that the Commanders lost their copyright or trademark on that name. So Redskins may come back. I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting stuff. I'm sure someone will get butthurt over that, but I don't know. I'm Native American. I personally not upset with the Redskins name. I've always been more upset with the Cleveland Indians name than I was with the Washington Redskins, but that's just me. So yeah, I think going forward we'll make this like an every Sunday thing. No, close to my team, but not my team. I like the Baltimore Ravens. I don't follow football as much as I used to, but that's always been my favorite team, just because I like black and purple together. I've always liked that color scheme. But the Sunday Night Lives, I think moving forward, I'll try to hit out one of these for like an hour or so every Sunday, barring if something comes up Obviously, life happens. So we'll try and knock out one of these at least once a week. If I'm out doing overnighters, depending on where I'm at, I might be able to hit out one of these as well. But the big thing I wanted to talk about on this one, for this week anyway, is fitness and how that applies to not only the outdoors, but preparedness, everyday life. All of that. It's a critical component to anything you're doing in life. We see with people that get older, a big reason they start to lose their mobility is because they start to lose some of the fast twitch muscles in their body. So, as we grow older, because some of us are closer to the end than we are at the beginning, it's important that we stay active and doing things to make sure that, if we want to stay active when we're older in life, um, that we're doing those things now. The Bengals, hey, I don't mind the Bengals. Um, have you ever tried StreamYard? I might have to try that out. I can't figure out why I can't launch streams on my laptop. I've done it before, but for some reason, the last two, this one and then last week, it sits there and like loads the entire time and never actually launches it. So, David, you mean like finding carbohydrates in the wild or having carbohydrates out in the wild? Like bringing those things with you? Because you could definitely hit on both of those topics. It just really depends on kind of what you're asking. But to give some context to my background, and I'm not just some random fool online talking out my ass about fitness, because you can find those. Look around, you'll stumble across some influencers. Um, I when I first went to college, or when I first started college, I should say, I was going to school for an exercise science, actually a kinesiology degree, so I could eventually become an athletic trainer or some sort of sports trainer. And I did really, really well with like the practicals, designing programs, understanding different training methodologies, all of that. I understand that perfectly. My hang up was always like the mathematics and science stuff because I can't remember formulas to save my life. I did that. Ended up putting school on pause for a while just because life happens, and it just was a little bit too much for me. And then I went and got certified to be a personal trainer through Ace Fitness, and I worked at a gym, both in membership sales and as a trainer for 2 or 3 years. So I've trained tons of clients, from people that play football all the way to people that are just trying to lose weight to have surgeries or kind of get in better health. So I have a really, really good base of knowledge when it comes to fitness, because it's been something that's been extremely important in my life, at least for the last 11 years and a little bit before that as well. So finding carbohydrates in the wild is going to be extremely hard. A lot of people have this notion, kind of like this. They fantasize with survival or bugging out that, oh, I'll just live off of whatever I can get off the landscape. And you can get fats to some degree, depending on the animals you take down. You can get tons of protein as long as you're getting game. Carbohydrates are always going to be the hardest macronutrient to find, mainly because you can find them, but generally not in large quantities. That's a big reason why people got into farming, was to make sure that they had that steady supply of carbohydrates. Because if you can really mass produce a lot of carbohydrates, it can feed a lot of mouths with what you're harvesting versus trying to gather that. Like looking back with Native Americans, they did a lot with acorns and fruits and different starches like that, like corn, potatoes. And typically it wasn't that they were farming. Eventually down the line they started to farm. But as hunter-gatherers, they were finding whatever food sources they came across. So that was a big staple of theirs. If you look at a lot of Native Americans, especially like down the Southwest, corn is usually a pretty big staple for a lot of tribes out there. Yeah, exactly. It's all seasonal dependent. You're never gonna find a source for year round. I mean, bark maybe, but you're gonna have a hell of a time in the winter. Back when I took my winter survival course back in 2019 with Josh Enyart up in the Adirondacks, he was telling us a tale, and I can't remember what the tree up there that he said you could use this with, but there was a tribe in that area that all the other tribes called bark eaters, and back in those times that was seen as a derogatory term between tribes. Essentially, you're insulting them, saying, "Hey, you can't hunt worth a damn." But they ate the inner bark of particular trees, and I can't remember exactly what those trees are. But it is possible. But if you watched Alone, I can't remember what season it was. That guy, he ate the inner bark, like a ton of it, and you can do that. But you've seen what the ramifications for that. You know, it messed up his gastrointestinal system pretty badly, and that's what ended up getting him yanked out of the show. Is having to deal with that. Like, if you were gonna go that route, I would say you're gonna need a good source of fat, number one, just because that's gonna help kind of lubricate things for you. And also, you're gonna try and have to find some sort of, whether it's berries or greens, to kind of add additional fiber and a little bit more roughage to that. It just kind of helps break things up so you're not having just like that constant flood of bark in your system. Yeah, Native Americans farmed. It wasn't really until a lot of more like colonization started to happen. They farmed to some degree, but it wasn't like to the scale a lot of like the colonies were doing. Yeah, Kentucky Prepper. I mean, people get this notion with, you know, the fantasy of bugging out that, hey, something happens, I'm taking off from my house and going to my bug out location. I'm covering 100 miles in 2 days, and I'm like, that's just, there's not even through hikers that are doing that. I mean, you'll probably get some ultra through hikers that may do something like that, but I mean, for the average person, good luck hitting like 10 miles, especially if you're overland, not hitting on trails. Like, unless you're conditioned to put in that kind of work, you ain't maintaining that pace for very long. You also have to consider not only your conditioning in that situation, but the condition of those that are coming with you. If you have a family, kids are not traveling that kind of distance. They can, but you're going to have some issues on your hands with in regards to like security, because obviously those kids are going to kind of number one, be stressed out in those situations. But number two, you know, after repeated days of doing that stress on their body is gonna start kind of affecting their behaviors, and they're gonna start getting unruly on you. So if you're ever thinking like bugging out, and that's kind of like with this topic, why I wanted to bring it up. What really like spurred this topic idea is this past week, last couple of days, Go Ruck selection happened. And if you're not familiar with that, Go Ruck, they're a rucking company, make backpacks, put on events. Go Ruck Selection is like their big event every year. Like, essentially, you could think of it as like their championship game. It's 48 hours long, and there is like less than a 3% pass rate for this event. It's billed as the world's toughest endurance event. I can't say for a fact that that's true, because I haven't looked at every single endurance event out there. But if you watch some videos on it, that event is brutal. This year, only the second woman ever to finish that event did that, and that's, I mean, for me, seeing someone do that is super motivating. That should give a lot of people motivation that if a female can really persevere and push through this, and I'm not saying that you have to go and do events like that, but that should motivate you to get active and start upping your level of fitness. Because if we're talking about a survival situation or emergency situation in general, where you have to get out of whatever location you're at, physical fitness is only an asset. It can never be a detriment. I'm a huge proponent of being fit, and you don't have to, be sub 10% body fat or run 3 miles in 18 minutes or anything crazy. But having an above average level of fitness is extremely important. What did I get cattails. Yeah, you can definitely eat cattails. I wouldn't recommend using them as wild free range corn dogs because that might not work out for you. But the bottom, like the bottom quarter of that stalk and everything down in the ground, you can eat that if you boil it. You'll get some of those starches out of there. Um, we've done that for classes as a way to get carbohydrates. Yeah, it tastes like garbage. Like it's probably one of the worst things you can drink. Not gonna lie. Exactly. If you're bugging out and getting from point A to point B, or even beyond that, like this notion that you're gonna be out there, oh, I'm gonna be downing deer and taking game and collecting food and scavenging all this, like everyone's gonna have that notion. It's gonna be the wild wild west all over again. Um, I can almost guarantee you it ain't gonna last long for you. Being diabetic, backpack, etc. Wondering. Yeah, I mean that's with being diabetic. Uh, my family has a long history of diabetes. That was honestly a big reason why I started working out and working to be fit. Is I don't want to deal with diabetes. I like eating my food, so I don't want to kind of be like curtailed from not eating certain things or have to worry about if I eat this, my blood sugar spikes, and then I got to take insulin or got to worry about this and that. And then the secondary things I'm worried about, if the grid goes down, there's something crazy like that happens. The medications necessary for that are going to be extremely limited, if not available at all. I actually wrote a paper. Can't remember the exact course, but it was for one of my courses for my current degree in emergency management, homeland security. I wrote about, I think it was in 2018, about what would happen if the electrical grid went down for an extended period, like a year or more. And based off of, I think it's the CDC's estimations, about 80 to 90% of the U.S. population would perish in an event like that, just because of most people aren't comfortable in outdoor conditions, know how to dress for those conditions, or have some sort of medical, history that's going to be greatly impacted in those sorts of events. So with being diabetic, I mean, the big thing with that is like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what medically you should do, but I mean, there's options out there, and it really depends on what type of diabetes you have. Because if you're, dependent on a medication, I mean, you're pretty much stuck at that point. I mean, there's no way really around that. But yeah, with fitness, it's often overlooked and definitely undervalued. I know right now, like the military is suffering with recruiting rates because I just started reading a new book today. They talked about it briefly in there. I think it's like 70 or 80% of military aged adults, or those that can be in the military, are unfit, whether from being overweight, just not physically fit. So that's a huge issue nowadays. The benefit of having all the conveniences we have is the trade-off is we're not working like our ancestors did. Now granted, some of us are out here working out and getting after it, but generally most people aren't, and that's understandable because I mean life is pretty busy. I mean, hell, this past month for me has been nuts. I've been to Texas, came back, started school, work, so definitely get that's not the easiest thing, but there's a lot of small things you can do. Just starting going for walks around your neighborhood, whether that's just starting off no weight, no ruck, anything like that, just going for hour walk every single day. It's all snowballs. People, when they think of working out, they think of, these grueling, 80s montage workouts, and sometimes a little goes a really, really long way. For diabetes, I heard to boil okra and drink it. I'm not too familiar with that, to be completely honest with you, so I couldn't really give you an opinion if that works or not. I know that cinnamon does help with stabilizing your blood sugar, I know my stepdad, he has diabetes, and for a while he was off his medication and he was taking. I know cinnamon was one of them, and there was a couple other herbs he was taking, and that really helped kind of keep things in check before it kind of all derailed for him. Now I don't know. I can't always remember the differences between type 1 and type 2. Um, so I can't really give you a ton of info on what to do in those situations. If you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, but I'm a huge advocate for people doing research, and don't just look up like men's health or women's health or these bullshit workout magazines that tell you greatest workout ever and build 100 pounds in 1 month type stuff. Um, every time I look for like any sort of research, I always look to like academic stuff. If there's studies that have been done that can show the efficacy of some of these methods, even with survival stuff, I do that. I look at trying to find studies that prove what types of insulations work best. Um, Methods of disinfecting water, because if it's going through a lab, that gives you a really good readout if this thing actually works out in reality as it says on paper. A common saying I have, if you've ever been my student, I said everything works in theory. It doesn't always work out when you put it in the real world. But fitness, I mean, there's a ton. Like I said, a small amount goes a long way sometimes. Um, if you've been inactive, start off by going for walks. Um, do calisthenics. I mean, you don't even need weights for that or a gym membership. You can do push-ups, sit-ups. Eventually, work towards pull-ups. You can supplement those things with different tools you can get. Resistant bands, all sorts of stuff that you can do. The biggest thing is just getting the ball rolling, and it's something I struggled with myself. With being on the road for the last 3 years, I've gained a ton of weight. Like I think when I started instructing, I was about 220. Last time I weighed myself, I fluctuate anywhere from like 255 to about 265. You would never think it when you see me because I carry a large amount of muscle mass, but it can really compound on you, especially if like you're on the road a lot, eating like trash. It can happen to someone who's been fit. If you look online, you can see some people that do like a fat to fit series. So it happens. It ebbs and flows just like anything. It's just about getting back on the horse and just starting that ball rolling and just get that snowball effect. Oh yeah, Splingwood's that's a hell of a workout. That'll show you what you're made of if you spend an entire day doing that. Um, Yikes! Yeah, you got a little hefty there, Jake. I just came across one of your old videos and I'm like, damn man, I remember that kid. But it happens. I mean, it happens to everyone at some point. You're gonna gain weight. Biggest thing is just, are you gonna do something about it, or are you just gonna be comfortable with the state you're being in? Especially if you're trying to be prepared to face, emergency situations or challenges that may pop up when you're out in the wild or in an emergency situation that happens in town. Um, for me, that's out like with adaptable survival. That's, if you look at my tagline, it's mind, body, gear. Your body's a part of that triangle. Your mind's number one because that's always going to be the greatest tool you have. Next is your body because those two things are always with you regardless of where you're at. So the more you can do to hone both of those tools and keep them as sharp as possible, it's only going to benefit you in the time that you need them. Um, like I said, there's tons of methodologies out there. Like it all really depends on what your goal is. Are you trying to be a bodybuilder? Because that's going to be completely different from someone who's trying to do a through hike or a marathon runner or someone who does triathlons or Ironmans. Um, the one methodology I've always liked, but I don't necessarily like the execution of it, is CrossFit. I like the general concept of training in a lot of different areas. Um, But I think over the years, I think they've moved a lot more towards like Olympic lifting and stuff like that, which for the average person, even for myself, I don't even do any kind of Olympic lifting just because there's a high risk of injury if your form isn't down. So I never really recommend a lot of people do that. I had a few clients that played sports, and I guided them through Olympic lifting. Um, but if you're gonna do anything like that, get a coach. No, don't watch some YouTube videos and think you can do it, because I can guarantee you're gonna get injured. King Clarence, how's it going, man? So like for myself, I've always looked towards the military and how they trained. Number one, I tried to join the military when I was 23. I was kind of a hellion when I was a teenager. This was back in 2012. I was trying to join the Marine Corps. I lost 70 pounds in 4 months. Went from barely, not even touching the scale on the initial fitness test to I'd knocked out damn near perfect score on the Marine Corps fitness test. So I was running 3 miles in under 18 minutes. I think I would max out at like 18 pull-ups, and then I would always max out at like about 85 sit-ups at that time. So I've always looked towards that because I've always looked at what was the needs of the situations that they're going to be in. A lot of times, some of these guys you see in the military aren't muscle-bound ogres, just because the more muscle mass you carry on your body, the more oxygen your body's going to need to fuel those muscles. And with military units, you need to be strong, but you can't be hampered by that muscle mass, because it's going to destroy your cardio. Like, thankfully, for considering my size, I have pretty good cardio. I can ruck all day, I can backpack all day long, and it doesn't tire me, but I go run a quarter mile and I'm on the verge of death. So with the military, they're trying to hit almost similar lines as CrossFit, having that explosive strength, as well as that muscular endurance to continue whatever activity or mission or whatever they're doing. They need an engine that takes them that long haul, as well as having the cardio behind that. It's very, very underrated that people do that. King, just chill, dude. God damn. Calm down in the comment section here. Getting wild. Like, I've always told people, when I'm in the woods or I'm on trail, I'm not trying to be a sports car. I'm trying to be a diesel engine, because a diesel's just going to keep on going. Whatever you throw at it, it's just going to keep on trucking. And that's kind of the way I set up my workouts. So I do lift weights, but I do body weight stuff. I do cardio, and I mix it up a little bit that way. So like this week, actually starting tomorrow, I'm launching a little pilot program for myself, based off a ruck lift run, rest kind of structure. A little bit different than some of the other programs that methodologies you can come out there. You have people that do push pull, which basically like you're pushing movements away, pulling movements, and that's still a core thing with how I train. I just look at how the human body moves, and I try to get extremely proficient with those movements, because it's only going to make you stronger, especially when you're navigating very rocky, uneven, hellish terrain. Another kind of group that I look towards for shaping how I shape my approach to fitness is backpack hunters. Those guys and women are hiking in who knows how many miles with everything they're going to need for a few days up to weeks at a time. And then if they do harvest something, they're hiking that animal back out after they process it out in the field. So you're talking about easily 100 plus pounds. And depending on if they're taking their gear out with them, that takes a lot of not only just strength to be able to haul that kind of weight out, but the endurance for the long haul to continue to do that for miles and miles until you're back to your vehicle, base camp, whatever. So the military and backpack hunters is personally where I look to for kind of guidance on how to get fit or like shape my fitness. Just because it's you're getting a blend of things. You're not just focusing on being a gorilla in the gym with benching 500 pounds and being the next Harambe. You're balancing all those things out, kind of fine tuning them. And there's nothing saying you can't get super swole or anything, but you have to kind of curtail it with that, knowing that you're gonna really have to beef up your cardio to take advantage of that. You guys have any questions on fitness before I keep rambling on and running into random topics? So I know, like, when I go out and shoot videos, I go to one core spot a lot just because I never see anyone there. And it's only maybe a mile and a half, round trip for me to get out to that location. But it all depends on where you're going. Not all of us can jump on a side-by-side or a four-wheeler and pull up to the woods, walk in like we just hiked in miles and shoot videos. That's just not reality for a lot of people. Some of us have to go, hike in a couple miles sometimes to get to a spot that's secluded enough to shoot videos and be able to do those things. Yeah, this will be reposted after the fact, and I'm not sure if the comment section or the chat will be on the video. For some reason, it doesn't give me the option on my phone to save it like it does on my laptop. That's why I was really trying to get the live stream on my laptop so I could save the chat so people could kind of read it as I'm going. But I'll try and read questions off as I answer them, just to kind of give people context so I'm not just talking about random stuff. How long does it see? It all depends. So, like, for me, I would say I'm more of an intermediate experience, when it comes to fitness. I could probably say I'm advanced just because I've been so involved with it for so long, but having as much time off as I've had in the last year or two, I would say I'm more intermediate. So sometimes for people in like the intermediate or advanced categories, it's really hard for us to see results like instantly. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time to really see the work that's paying off. But if you're just getting in to fitness and trying to lose weight or get stronger or anything like that, a thing happens called newbie gains. You see a lot of progress initially, just because you're essentially shocking your body, and it's like taking it's adapting to that stimulus that you're giving it. So you're going to get really strong really fast. You may lose a ton of weight really fast. I've always noticed for myself, as long as I stay consistent with a meal plan, I lose weight really quickly. But the downside is, as soon as I fall off that meal plan, start eating whatever, that weight shoots right back up just as quick. So it depends. If you're just getting into it, you'll probably see some pretty good results really quickly, both with strength and weight loss if that's your goal. But it's so dependent. It's like trying to survive in different environments. It's really dependent on the environment you're in. So let's say someone who's 6'4" and 150 pounds with a super high metabolism, to put on the kind of muscle mass like a person with my body type has is going to be extremely hard for them, just because their metabolism's so high. They're going to have to put in loads of calories, and really just put in that diligent work to make that progress. Where if you're bigger, sometimes it can be harder for you to lose weight. It all comes off your metabolism. So just start getting the ball rolling. And initially, sometimes what can happen is you might not see a huge change. And I was actually just watching a video in the last couple weeks of a way to really track your progress and kind of average out what you're doing per week. Is each day you weigh yourself throughout the week, and then you total up, I think, the variance between there, and it'll kind of give you an average of what your weight was for that week, and you just compare that from week to week, and that'll give you an pretty accurate gauge on the progress that you're making. After working fitness side by side has been. That'll get you, Kentucky, man. You rely on that Kubota too much, you don't get those foot miles in. It's gonna get you one day. The best way to improve cardio, um, and I said this a little bit earlier. A really good way, especially if you're really new to fitness, is just getting out and walking for hour, every single day. That'll kind of get your body starting to condition into being used to that movement, and then from there, you can do a combination of running with rucking. I use a stair climber quite a bit. It's absolute hell, but I have seen significant increases in my cardio using that. But that can really tax you out. So try out different forms of cardio, running, rucking. The thing I'll say with running and rucking is ease yourself into those activities. Running, so one thing a lot of people don't consider, and with me working at REI, sometimes I'm in the shoe department, so I'm getting people running shoes, and I don't run a ton, but what I do know with running, especially if you're brand new, first thing I tell people is, if you're just getting into running, look up a Couch to 5K program, and that's actually what I'm starting this week, so I can get back in the running. It's a really slow progressing program, but it will help condition your legs to get used to the impact it feels from running. I can't remember the exact numbers on the amount of pound impact you're feeling on your legs every time your foot hits when you run, but I want to say it's like 3 to 4 times your body weight. So you figure, if you're running a couple miles, I mean, that's a lot of beating on your legs, and if it's your legs aren't conditioned to that, that's when the injuries start piling up, and shin splints and all those issues start popping up. And then same with rucking. I see a lot of people try to do a lot of weight really fast, or a lot of mileage really fast, and they start having issues, whether their back's getting rubbed raw, or shoulders getting rubbed raw, or getting blisters. Like what I'm starting this week is I'm starting off at 2 miles with a 30-pound ruck plate. Just getting into it because I got to recondition my feet a little bit better. And it doesn't matter how much I do it. Like I'm prone to get a blister on the bottom of my left foot. Even when I was, hiking all the time, multiple days a week, I always get that blister on that foot. I've tried different footwear, different socks, and it's a chronic issue. And the best way that I can alleviate that is if I slap on some Leuko tape over that, or even duct tape would work. How do you get the weight to come off my belly instead of my butt? There's no way to spot reduce weight, fat loss. It just has to happen over time. So for me, my arms and my legs are a lot leaner than my midsection. I store all of my body fat in my midsection and my chest. So to see that weight come off, it's gonna have to my body's gonna have to eat the fat from my legs and my arms, my face, and then kind of work inwards. Unfortunately, at least science hasn't found a way to spot reduce. So if you want to keep your butt, do them squats and deadlifts. I run out of breath fast when I try to run. Do you know what that could be? I don't smoke. A big thing with that, K, is your body doesn't have the cardiovascular system built up enough for that. I mean, there's times when I start rucking and I'm out of breath. Hell, when I shoot videos sometimes, just shooting videos sometimes I can, start breathing a little bit heavy. Granted, I'm doing a lot of things at once, but, just staying consistent with some sort of program. A good thing to try and incorporate is some sort of interval training. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to do this with running, especially if you're not like a conditioned runner, or at least your legs aren't conditioned with this, because that can really accelerate that beating they take. But if you hop on the stair climber, And start off with like a 5-minute warm up, just really low pace, just kind of get moving. And then I typically like to go with like a 30-second at like a pretty fast pace, and then about a minute and a half going back down to that slower pace. And I'll do that for 5 to 10 rounds. Start closer to that 5 round period. So do that 5 times, and then slowly build up from there. I would first start trying to get close to that 10 rounds of those intervals before I try to increase the speed. That should help build up that cardiovascular system. Yeah, exactly, Chrissy. Like, it's 4 times your body weight that your joints are feeling. And you think, like, a guy my size, that's 1,000 pounds of beating on my body with every footstep. So you figure you put in a mile, and I always forget how many steps are in a mile, but that's a lot of pounding on your body. So no wonder your body's feeling like hell after the fact. But yeah, that like the Couch to 5K is basically a walk to run program. I always found that's a nice, easy way to get into running without, going into it really, really fast, getting burnt out, getting hurt, or having some sort of issue pop up, and then you're derailed and start back at zero because you fall off the program. I've done it myself, and I've had tons of clients go full force into a program that have never trained, and something happens where it derails them. They get hurt or they get worn out. Just start slow. Baby steps. Take a small snowball, roll it down the hill. At the bottom, there'll be a big one. Steven Seagal. There we go with this again. How many times I gotta tell you, man? I'm not a martial artist. Bike riding. Yeah, that's good. Bike riding. Hikes are good. Just like I said, simple walks around the neighborhood, and those all gonna help you. Yeah, HIIT training is extremely killer cardio. So back when I was trying to join the Marine Corps, the reason I was able to accelerate my weight loss and then my fitness so fast is because I was finally at a point where I was really taking my fitness seriously, and I just started off with the walk run program, and then I got to where I could run 3 miles no problem. And then I started incorporating interval training. So I actually did this on a treadmill so I could push my running pace a little bit faster. But I did the same thing, 30 seconds of just all out sprinting, a minute and a half of just a light walk, and then just did that off and on. And that's how I was able to get my 3 miles under 18 minutes. I thought I was going to die when I did that, because I damn near sprinted the whole thing, and I finished with like 17, and I had like a couple seconds to spare. But I also, at that time, I think I was like 170 pounds, which is like the lightest I think I've ever been, other than when I was a kid. But it was hard for me to stay at that weight. I was on an extremely strict meal plan. I think I was working out twice a day at that point. I was like easily in the best shape of my entire life, but it was a lot of work. All I basically did was train, go to school, go to work, and then do the same thing the next day. It worked. I mean, if you go, I don't know if I have any on my Instagram, but if you're friends with me on Facebook, if you go back in my pictures far enough, you'll see some pictures from that time. And I went from being out of shape to extremely ripped in like 6 months. And even when I was at 170 pounds, I still looked like I was over 200 pounds just because I naturally carry a lot of muscle mass. That also kind of hurts me with running. Extra miles, steps. And that's a lot of steps. Holy shit. Yeah, man. I feel like obviously I work at REI, so I work retail. And there's days where my legs are just beat up, and I just have to take some time off from doing anything to kind of get back. Plus, I have a chronic issue with my calves being tight, so it affects my left foot a lot with plantar fasciitis. I've never been able to get it to go completely away, I've gotten it to kind of go away for a long time, but then the last year or so, it's starting to flare up again. So I have to try to address that. So at one time I had it in both feet. That was, talk about hell, man. That was, I don't wish that on no one. Like, I couldn't do anything without my feet hurting. But yeah, I mean, especially when your legs are taking a beating. If you're just getting into running, rucking, anything like that, and you find that like your lower legs are hurting a lot, just go back. I think they call it the Rice method: rest, ice, compress, elevate. I did that a lot through that training when I was trying to join the Marine Corps, and that saved my legs. Admittedly, I get out of the habit from time to time from taking those same measures, but that stuff will work wonders for you. Recovery is a big thing people don't take too seriously when it comes to training. Either just just for general fitness, or if they're training for an event. The actual training that you're doing is not where you're going to see the gains in the performance that you're looking for. It's all in that rest period that you get, getting the proper amount of sleep, getting the proper amount of nutrition into your body, the hydration. All those things go into seeing the result that you want. A lot of people think I can just destroy myself at the gym and I'm going to see results, and you'll see some results for a while, but eventually those will taper off if you're not getting the proper rest and recovery. That's more important at the end of the day than any kind of training that you can do. So sleep wise with that recovery, I've read a lot of different stuff and it's all over the map. It's just like nutrition. What's popular today is going to be completely different tomorrow. It varies so widely. A big thing that I got into a discussion with some instructors through when I was going to school for kinesiology and exercise science. And I've never researched it very heavily, but I've always been of the belief that your genetics play a part into what nutrition, like what style of eating works for you. There's some people that do really, really phenomenal with keto, and there's other people that just can't do that need carbohydrates. I found for myself, if I eat a diet high in carbohydrates, and it's all relative, I'm talking about, like, let's say like 60% of my diet was carbohydrates, I get like super tired after meals then, because it's just like a carbohydrate overload for my body. So for me, I know I have to keep kind of my carbs in check. I think I usually go with like a 40% of my daily calories in carbs, about 25 or 30% in protein, and then the last in fat. If you really, really want to get down to the nuts and bolts and track it that way, that's where you can like get really, really good results. Most people aren't going to do that. The biggest thing I try to keep track of is how much protein I'm taking in, and then just try to keep a general idea of the calories I'm taking in, just so I'm not going too crazy. But it's easier said than done. Plantar fasciitis, a big thing, is the shoes you're wearing. A lot of people wear shoes for way too long for the lifespan for the shoes. And it varies on the style of shoe you're wearing, but like running shoes, for instance, they typically have a lifespan of 300 to 500 miles. Now, it's not going to say it hits that mileage marker and it's going to completely disintegrate, but that's the range where the support and cushioning is supposed to last. After that point, it starts breaking down, and that's when some issues will start coming into play. I learned a lot more about this once I started at REI, because a part of my training was learning footwear. So a really good indicator to know if it's time to get new shoes, whether it's running or any other kind. If you look at the side of your shoe and you see any kind of those creases in the sole, it basically telling you that the cushioning in those shoes is completely compressed down and it's not doing anything for you. You can mitigate that some with insoles, and I've done that, but that's only like a temporary fix to the problem. Its big thing is the proper footwear, There's really good programs you can get, or you can meet with a physical therapist to go through some exercises. I know for myself, my issue stems from my calves being so tight. It's been an issue I've had my entire life, so I have to try and be as diligent as I can to keep my calves loosened up. Um, because basically what's happening is because my calves get tight, it's essentially pulling that tendon that comes down from my calf into my foot. It's constantly pulling that up and irritating that. Um, so I try to make that a habit, and it, like everything, it can fall out of the rotation, but make it a habit. Yoga is really good. I know when I was training with for the Marine Corps, like 2 of the days out of the week, the only thing I did for an hour was yoga, and I was basically had never had tight muscles. My recovery was like I could have, even at working out twice a day, I wasn't even sore the next day. Like I could tell I worked out, but it wasn't like crippling soreness where I couldn't do anything. So I'm a big advocate for doing yoga. It's super beneficial for everyone. Um, Definitely check that out. Speaking of footwear, what do you recommend for your classes? The tricky part with footwear is it's like trying to tell. Can't think of a good comparison off the top of my head here, but it's so individualistic that what works for me may or may not work for you. Like for me, a big problem I have is my feet are wide. I'm a full size wider than my feet are long. Got Fred Flintstone feet, so I have to find boots and shoes that really accommodate for that, and then kind of accommodate for the other issues I have, like with the plantar fasciitis. But for just like a straight up hiking boot, the other than the fit, the other thing that I look for is something that has an aggressive tread pattern on the bottom of the sole. Like Solomon, I think it's the X Ultra 4s, are probably one of my favorite boots ever. Well, the X Ultra series, the newest iteration of that doesn't quite fit me quite how I'd like. But the tread pattern on there, it looks like an aggressive mud tire. And that's all what I always look for. I look for a boot that has a really aggressive tread pattern, because I know that regardless of the terrain, it's going to give me traction. The only time you're ever going to run into issues is if there's clay in the soil, because there's nothing you can do. Like it's going to clump up, your footwear is going to get slick, and you're going to slip and slide at some point. The best you can do is try to keep your boots not gunked up. For running shoes, again, it's all varies. I always tell people if you can get into a store, like if you can get to an REI or Cabela's or any of these places and just spend one day, trying as many different boot styles and brands as you can, that'll give you a better indication of which brands work best for you. I know for me, Loas and Solomons are my go-tos. Also Obos. Um, I found that those for my feet work the best, but some people need other shoes. They're like La Sportiva. Those are really good for people with narrow feet. But get out, try those on. It's the same thing I tell people with packs. There's not a one size fits all pack out there. What works for me is not going to work for you. I love my Kafaru and Gorucks, but for some people they're just not comfortable. Get out there and try it. Find a store where you can try as many of those things as you can, and that'll give you a better indication of which ones are going to work for you. I haven't been to Jake's property, so I can't say what kind of footwear is going to work best. But my go-to has always been an aggressive tread boot, and I've been good everywhere I've went. Let's see what other topics I want to hit on here. Nutrition, like I said, that varies. It's go drastically. Like I'm from being a personal trainer. It was a good and bad experience, just like other experiences in life. I seen the value that it brings to people's lives. Even when I was a personal trainer, I worked with another trainer that I worked with to keep me in check. Um, Basically, I met with him, I think twice a month, and he would take my measurements to make sure that, seeing the progress in cutting weight and, doing the things that I wanted to do. Um, it's super helpful because it gives you someone with an objective um, outlook on your situation. Yeah, you're paying them, and they want to see you be successful, but they're not going to bullshit you. The numbers are going to be what the numbers are, and it just helps keeps you in check. And if you're new or you're trying to learn a more advanced lifting technique like Olympic lifting, someone with that knowledge can really accelerate your growth. It's the same wave thing for going to a survival course. You're getting that hands-on experience with someone who's done this hundreds, if not thousands of times, so they can teach you little intricacies, can teach you something that might work for you that they notice, that might be a little hack that you might not read in a book or see on a video at all. Yeah, I would say that might be an issue depending on how wet it is down there during that class. Um, Thanks for stopping in, K. Paul. Yeah, good to have you in here, man. Good questions you had. Um, insulated, insulating boots, I don't think are as important. Kind of in that early November time period, especially in Ohio. It Ohio, I found Ohio weather varies so much more than Wisconsin weather, and I thought Wisconsin weather was off the, taking a spin dial, spin it, and you might get snow in the middle of summer. Um, so I wouldn't necessarily worry so much about the insulated footwear, but waterproof. So I've covered this in another live when I talked about the advanced class after the fact. My feet got so jacked up on my second advance because I decided to go with non-waterproof boots. I got trench foot, even though I was drying out my feet and my boots every single night. They were getting so waterlogged that they would just go back to the way they were the day before. And then the final 2 days, my feet were so painful that I couldn't put pressure anywhere on my foot. I tried like leaning to the outsides, and it was just excruciating pain everywhere. Um, so for me, that basically destroyed the idea of like non-waterproof boots. Now, as I get going into some Go Ruck events, that'll probably change because, especially, so like I said earlier, what spurred this idea for this live stream was the Go Ruck selection. Ideally, in an ideal world, perfect world, I'd like to do the Go Ruck selection next year because it's going to be in France on Normandy Beach. Time will tell if I can get into the level of fitness that I would feel comfortable going into an event like that. But going into an event like that, I'm sure as hell not bringing waterproof boots because they put you in the water. And if you know anything about waterproof boots, water goes in, water does not come back out. So in that situation, I would probably go to a non-waterproof boot, so at least it can come back out. But in general, I always go with waterproof boots. I'd rather deal with some sweaty feet than some soaking wet feet that turn into trench foot. Yeah, Ohio gets super muddy. That's the thing I'd always say. It didn't matter what the class was, it got muddied. It was a pain in the ass. So the Go Rug boots. So I have a pair of the very first Mac V's that they came out with. And the downside with those are more of like a road rucking boot than like an off-road boot because there was no traction at all. And even the second generation, I think the current one is really, really good. It's got a better tread pattern, but the one downside I've seen with Mac V's is the sole and then the upper half will separate over time. And that could be for a variety of reasons. People not properly caring for them, just wear and tear. These things, boots aren't always going to go hundreds and years of mileage. They're going to break down if you're not taking care of them, just like anything else. Especially like leather boots, you can get them things that last for a lifetime, but you got to do the maintenance to ensure that that happens. But Go Rucks may work really well for you. I haven't had a pair in a couple of years, so I can't say for sure or not. The Wooby jackets. So that was something I had before I even started at the school, and that was something I, you know, brought to the awareness of all the other instructors, and then kind of, that's why everyone else started wearing them. So those are from Perseverance Survival. It's a vet-run company out of Oceanside, California. If you look up their social media, their site, they're on there. The jackets, I know, depending on the style, like the camo pattern, go through pre-sales for a lot of them now. Like I just ordered an all-black one because my woodland camo ones, after I think probably six or at least 5 years of owning it, it's pretty beat up. It still works well for like a camp jacket, but I wanted a newer one, so hopefully it fits. And I should be getting that in the next week or so. But there's other companies that makes those. That's just the one that I got, and has been like the best performing one that I've noticed, because I've seen a few other ones and they're a little bit thinner, a little bit different, but I like the features. On the newest model is they have some zippers on the pockets. Oh yeah, I think that's pretty common just about anywhere. The weather's gonna, wait 5 minutes and the weather changes. The weather here in Wisconsin, like if it's not frozen half the damn year, it's like humid as hell. Like I was just in San Antonio a couple weeks ago, and it was 100 degrees every single day. Got off the plane, walked out the airport at 9 o'clock at night, and it was 95 degrees out and humid. But the humidity down there was nothing like the humidity up here. Back to the Wooby jackets. I've used those while winter camping with just really good base layers underneath, some thicker base layers. Probably down to like the 20s, you'd be good. Anything lower, you're definitely going to need some more substantial insulation. I've actually been looking at some different insulations for hunting season this November, because I always freeze my ass off in my stand. So I gotta find some better insulating layers for that. More so not the base layers, but like some puffy pants and a puffy jacket. Is kind of what I'm looking at right now. Let's see if there's any questions I missed in here. I think I've hit everyone that's had questions. So, like I said, these Sunday night live chats, moving forward, we're gonna try hit one every Sunday night. Obviously, watch my social media, because I'm gonna post probably a couple days beforehand. Like I had the idea for this week, but let's say next week I might not have an idea, so I might throw something up asking for suggestions. So always keep an eye out there. I'll get in the habit of posting that on the community tab on YouTube as well. I just always space on it because I don't post on there a ton. Still gonna make my typical videos. Just trying to nail down a good rotation for the videos. One where I'm putting out quality videos and not just rushing them. People vastly underestimate how much work it takes into producing a video, from shooting it and then getting home and watching all the clips you have. I try to do a lot of like pre-editing while I'm out there, so if I don't feel quite comfortable with what I just shot, I'll reshoot it. And I've done that 10 times for one scene, and it's a pain in the ass. But for me, with my YouTube videos, my goal has always been, I want to clean them up and polish them up, but I don't want to lose that authenticity that like old school YouTube videos used to have. If you look at some of the bigger outdoor channels from 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, I want to find that even ground from like the highly produced videos that you see on YouTube now, and then that real reality style of videos of people getting out there. So I'm trying to find that nice balance. Definitely plan to learn some more editing skills and color grading and stuff like that to kind of give it a little bit more cinematic view for some videos. But those will be coming out. Like I said, I'm going to launch like this pilot training program, and depending on how it works out for the next couple of months, maybe in the beginning of next year, I might launch that as a way to buy that training program. Kind of my goal with that is what I also want to include is a way to learn survival skills while you're doing the fitness. So that may be like, let's say if you're at a higher level, doing a 3 or multi-mile ruck, and as soon as you get back, grab a bow drill set and crank out an ember, something along those lines. So I've been putting together a training program like that, and see how it goes the next couple of months, and then maybe the beginning of next year launch that out for people who are looking to get in shape and learn survival skills all in one. I mentioned last week about the podcast, about launching a podcast on my own. So, been kind of brainstorming some ideas for the name of that podcast. It'll probably start on the Adaptable Survival channel, just so monetize wise, I can kind of keep that ball rolling. Just so eventually, hopefully, I can build this into something I can do all the time and put more time and effort into, produce higher quality content. But we'll see how things roll. If y'all don't have any more questions for me, I don't got nothing for you. So as always, I said, don't always drink the Kool-Aid. Not always as good as it seems. Mr. Zero Brain Cells. Well, based on that comment, I see why your name is Mr. No Brain Cells. So, melon muncher, huh? I don't know what you mean by that. I'm just gonna leave it there. I ain't gonna say that on this live. But anyway, y'all ever have questions, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM on social medias. I'm pretty good at getting back to those pretty quickly. A song. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Next week I'll try and think of a topic. If you ever have, suggestions for topics to hit on, shoot me a DM. Look it over and think about it. Until next time, I'll see you guys next week. Get out there and get after it. See y'all later. Before I hop off in this, email or DM, what is it? My email is adaptablesurvival@gmail.com. Don't flood me with a bunch of crap, because I will come and find you. The Instagram is Adaptable Survival. Facebook, Adaptable Survival. I'm not really on Twitter or X or what the hell it's called nowadays. I have a profile on there, but I don't ever use it. Your best bet is shooting me a Facebook message or an Instagram DM. Chicken bone sucker. Well, you have a good time with that. Zero brain cells. You probably need some help, but that's just my opinion. Till next week, guys. Get out there, get after it. I'll see y'all later.